I never thought I'd be standing in my own living room with strangers living in my house, and a SWAT team behind me. Yeah, you heard that right. This isn't some movie plot. This is what actually happened when my HOA rented out my home, without even asking me. Let me back up. I'd owned this house for years, paid the mortgage, took care of the place. Then I had to leave town for a while to help out with some family stuff. Nothing crazy, just life. I kept paying the HOA fees like clockwork, never missed a payment. But when I got back, I pulled into the driveway and saw other people's cars. Curtains I didn't recognize. A dog barking that wasn't mine. My stomach dropped. At first, I thought it was a mix-up. Maybe I had the wrong address. Maybe I was losing my mind. But no, it was my house, and someone else was living in it. I knocked. They answered. And that's when everything spiraled. Turns out, the HOA had taken it upon themselves to lease my property. No calls, no letters, nothing. Just gone. Like I never owned it to begin with. I tried everything. Calls, emails, even a lawyer. But no one would give me a straight answer. I couldn't believe how fast things went downhill. Weeks went by, and it felt like I was being erased from my own life. Until I had enough. I dug deeper, pulled records, and finally found a way back in. Legally. With a warrant. And yes, I moved back into my house, with the full support of law enforcement. But that was just the beginning. You won't believe what I found once I got inside. It wasn't just my stuff missing. There was something hidden in the garage that changed everything. Stick around, because this story only gets crazier from here. When I finally stepped through the front door with the warrant in hand, it didn't feel like coming home. It felt like I was walking into someone else's life. Their shoes were by the door, their pictures on the walls, even their dishes in my kitchen. I didn't recognize a single thing. My own belongings? Gone. No trace of them. The place had been completely cleared out and remodeled, like I'd never lived there at all. I went room by room, just trying to make sense of it. Everything was different. New furniture, new paint. I started filming everything for proof, but it honestly felt like I was intruding in a stranger's home. Except, it was mine. The people who had been living there were nowhere to be found. They had left just hours before I arrived. Almost like they'd been tipped off. As I walked through the house, I kept asking myself the same question. How did this happen? How could an HOA have the power to rent out someone's private home without permission? I started going back through old emails, letters, anything I might have missed. But there was nothing official. No foreclosure, no warning, just silence. And then suddenly, tenants. It didn't make sense. The HOA had always been a little too involved, sure, sending those annoying notices about weeds or paint colors. But this was something else. It felt like there was more going on behind the scenes. Like maybe someone had something to gain from me being gone. And then I got to the garage. At first glance, it looked empty. Just a few moving boxes shoved to the side. But when I moved one of them, I saw something taped underneath. The shelf, a small envelope with my name on it, in handwriting I didn't recognize. I froze. My heart started racing. That envelope wasn't there by accident. Someone left it for me. And what was inside? Well, let's just say, that changed everything. I sat there on the garage floor, just staring at that envelope for what felt like forever. The handwriting wasn't mine. It wasn't from anyone I knew. But it had my full name on it, spelled perfectly. I opened it slowly, not knowing what to expect. Inside, there was a single key and a short note that read, "You were never supposed to come back. Don't trust the board." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just that chilling message. My head was spinning. Who left this? What key was it? And why mention the HOA board? I knew they were involved somehow, but this felt way deeper than just bad management or paperwork mistakes. Something strange was going on behind the scenes, and this note confirmed it. I started thinking about the board members, especially Carl, the HOA president. He'd always been overly controlling, borderline obsessive about the neighborhood, rules. But I never imagined he'd have anything to do with something like this. I took the key and started trying it around the house. It didn't fit any of the interior locks. That's when I remembered there was a locked closet under the stairs, one I hadn't gotten to yet. It had always been where I stored old holiday decorations and random stuff, but now it was locked, with a new padlock. When I slid the key in, it clicked instantly. Inside, I found stacks of old HOA files, way more detailed than anything I'd ever received as a homeowner. There were records of other properties, suspicious maintenance charges, lease agreements, and even photos of houses that had supposedly gone vacant and were later rented out. I realized it wasn't just me. I might have just uncovered something much bigger, a pattern. I started snapping pictures of everything, my hands shaking. Someone was using the HOA to take over homes, quietly and carefully. And now that I was back, I was in the way. I could feel it. This wasn't just about my house anymore. This was something organized, and someone, maybe more than one person, was trying hard to keep it quiet. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that note again. Don't trust the board. The more I thought about it, the more pieces started falling into place. I remembered odd things from before I left town. Random notices slipped under my door that didn't match official HOA letters. Strange calls from maintenance asking if I'd be home. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now it all felt connected, like they were planning this long before I even packed a bag. The next morning, I went straight to the HOA office. It's just a small building at the front of the neighborhood, barely big enough for a desk and a coffee machine. But when I walked in, the receptionist looked like she'd seen a ghost. She stammered something about Carl being out for the day and tried to rush me out. I didn't leave. I asked to see public records, the stuff homeowners are allowed to request. She hesitated, then handed me a thick folder. What I found inside made my skin crawl. There were at least 4 other properties listed as abandoned that clearly weren't. Photos showed them in perfect condition. Some of the names listed as owners had been replaced by LLCs, with leases signed by the HOA board. And in every case, it was Carl's signature that appeared last, the same signature on the fake lease I found for my house. It was fraud, plain and simple, but done so cleanly, so quietly. It looked almost legal at first glance. I took photos of everything. But as I stepped outside, I noticed a black SUV parked down the street. It wasn't there when I arrived. And as I walked to my car, it pulled forward slowly, like they wanted me to see them. The windows were tinted. I couldn't see inside, but I could feel eyes on me. I drove straight home, heart pounding. When I pulled into my driveway, my mailbox was hanging open, and inside was a second note. No envelope this time, just a piece of paper folded in half. The message was short. You're in over your head. Leave before it's too late. And that's when the lights in my house flickered. The lights flickered again, this time longer. Then everything went dark. No power. Just silence. I stood frozen in my driveway, gripping that second note like it might explain everything if I stared hard enough. But it didn't. It just made things worse. I rushed inside, phone in hand, ready to call someone, anyone. But of course, no signal. Like someone didn't want me to talk to the outside world. I lit a flashlight and checked every room. Nothing seemed touched, but I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. Every creak, every shadow made my heart race. I locked all them away, doors, pulled the blinds, and went back to the folder I had copied from the HOA office. There was one page I hadn't looked at closely before. It was buried under fake lease agreements. A list of names. My name was on it. Next to it, a date, a red check mark, and the word cleared. But it was the other names that stopped me. One of them was my next-door neighbor, Emily. She'd moved out last year under strange circumstances. Said she was downsizing, but now I wondered, did she really leave by choice? I remembered her telling me she thought someone was watching her house, that the HOA had suddenly been fining her for things she swore weren't real. At the time, I thought maybe she was just stressed. Now, it felt like a warning I hadn't heard in time. I needed answers. I tried calling Emily from my car. Signal came back as soon as I left the driveway. She answered after 2 rings, and when I told her what was happening, she went dead quiet. Then she whispered, "You found the list, didn't you?" I asked what it meant. She paused, then said something I'll never forget. The board isn't just stealing homes. They're hiding something bigger, something they don't want anyone to find. Before I could ask more, the call dropped, and when I looked up from the screen, my front door was open. I know I locked it. I ran straight toward the open front door, flashlight beam shaking as I stepped inside. Every instinct told me to back off, call someone, wait, but I couldn't. I needed to know what was going on. My house, my life, had been turned upside down, and I wasn't backing down now. The living room was untouched. Same with the kitchen. Then I heard it. A faint creak upstairs, like someone had stepped on the hallway floorboard. I moved slow, heart pounding, gripping a wrench I'd grabbed from the garage on the way in. When I reached the top of the stairs, the hallway was dark, dead quiet. Until I saw it, my attic door was pulled down. I hadn't touched it since I moved back in. I climbed up, one careful step at a time. The attic was empty, at first. But tucked behind some insulation, I found an old, locked metal box, same kind I'd seen in those HOA files. The key from the first envelope, that key, fit perfectly. Inside were copies of forged documents, multiple property deeds, and, most shocking of all, recorded audio. I played one. It was a meeting. Voices I recognized from the HOA board, including Carl. They were discussing reclaiming underused properties, manipulating ownership records, and splitting the rental profits through fake LLCs. It was more than just my house. They had been flipping homes without permission for years. I recorded everything. I backed up the audio, the files, sent them to a lawyer, a local reporter, and even a few trusted neighbors who'd suspected something was off. The next morning, law enforcement showed up with real warrants this time. Carl and 2 others were taken into custody. The neighborhood was in shock. It should have felt like the end, like I won. And for a while, it did. But a week later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was another folder, new documents, different names, different properties. A notepaper clip to the top read, "This isn't just happening here." And just like that, I realized, this wasn't over. It might have only been the beginning. After getting that final package, I knew I couldn't just walk away. I turned everything over to a local investigator who was already looking into shady real estate activity. It turns out, the scam stretched. Beyond my neighborhood, multiple HOAs across the state were quietly flipping homes the same way, targeting owners who were out of town or in vulnerable situations. What happened to me wasn't an accident. It was part of a system. With the evidence I gathered, my case helped launch a much larger investigation. News outlets picked up the story. People started coming forward with similar experiences, confused homeowners, families who'd lost their properties without ever knowing why. And while not every case had a clean resolution, at least now, the pattern was exposed. Back in my own home, Things finally started to feel normal again. I replaced the locks, restored power, and slowly unpacked what was left of my life. The neighbors, who stayed, started talking more. People who used to keep to themselves were suddenly knocking on each other's doors, checking in, asking questions. It was like the whole community woke up at once. Emily and I stayed in touch too. She was one of the first people to push back when things felt off, and now she was helping others recognize the signs. Together, we helped organize a new board, transparent, elected properly, and accountable. No more secrets. Looking back, it still feels surreal. One minute I was just coming home, and the next I was fighting to prove it was mine. But here's what I've learned. Always ask questions. Keep records. And never assume someone else has your best interest just because they say they do. My house is my home again, and this time, I'm not letting it go without a fight.